never around when difficult things are having to be done, ducking, answering, absolute outrage, bubbling fury. Labour is soft on crime. Over my dead body will you be releasing those criminals? This is just unacceptable. Why aren't these people, why aren't they in prison? What happens to those people? We're at breaking point. We can't let any more in. And do you know what his solution is?
Tell me.
Safe routes.
Hello and welcome to the Daily Expresso. We're with Esther McVey, the Tory MP and our very own Westminster Whisperer. Est, Parliament's in recess, but there is one thing that's got a lot of people's blood boiling, and that is Burnham taking a break abroad.
Well, look, I don't have a problem with people having holidays. We all need holidays. But what I will say, for a man so obsessed with his public image, that he wants everybody to think he's a nice, normal kind of guy. Does he have baps or barm cakes, pork scratchings or crisps, how he has his cup of tea, does he wear a T-shirt, all of this, that to have gone away so quickly, I think is a rookie error, because people will start saying 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. Andy, he was Prime Minister for 2 weeks and then he went on holiday. So I think he has misjudged the timing of his holiday. And what he will learn as a Prime Minister, people are making judgments about you all the time. They're forging patterns about you and what you do. And there's an unfortunate pattern already forming for Andy Burnham. He's there when he's being, giving things away, benevolent Andy, there when he wants to talk about what he wants to do, but not there for the difficult times. So he never took any of the journalists' questions after he'd given his big speech in Manchester. But the big issue here is just before he went away on holiday, the big issue that had the nation up in arms was Labour's Sentencing Act and that early release of serious offenders and criminals from prison. Rapists were coming out, serious sexual offenders were coming out, and we saw, killers were coming out. And in this instance, it was the killers of P.C. Harper. And this was the policeman who, on duty, got dragged for over a mile by this car, by these guys, and he died. And so Andy Burnham, before he went on holiday, said, "Oh, I get it. I get the upset. I'm going to stand in and do something. I'm going to pause this change, this release of criminals, and we're going to stop this." The day he went on holiday, it was announced by government that actually P.C. Harper's killers were going to be released, 2 out of the 3 of them. And people will go, "Oh, I thought you were going to be our saviour, Burnham. You've sort of put yourself as this great big white knight, a normal guy, but white knight who knows how we feel." And yet you didn't. And this is being reflected in the polls. People are making judgments. People are seeing patterns. And there had been a Burnham bounce. For the first time in 16 months, Labour had come top of the polling, beaten Reform. And yet the latest polls out this week shows Reform is back on top, not by a lot, 23% to 22%, the YouGov poll, but they're back on top. And I will say people are now saying, "Oh, is Andy Burnham and the Labour Party what we thought they were going to be?"
Because that Burnham bounce wasn't at all what people expected. It's really flatlined almost immediately.
Yes, so the Burnham bounce, there was a lot in there, and people have analysed these figures. A lot of it was like, for you, Starmer's gone. So there was a lot of that. And thank goodness he's been replaced by Andy Burnham. And he is, more charismatic. He is more personable, all of these things, absolutely. But then they saw his great big announcements on day one. He would end rough sleeping, although he didn't manage to do it in Manchester, but he was going to do it at a cost of £340 million. He was going to axe the VAT on energy bills, cost to the nation 340 million, but it was saving people 45 quid a year, about 87 pence a week. And he was going to cap the £2 bus fare, first person ever. Not quite true. Actually, Labour had put it up, so it had been done before by the previous government. That was going to cost 455 million. And also people said the apprenticeship bribe, £2,500 to parents who are on benefits if the kids did apprentices, but not if working families were doing that. So they saw, oh, that's a lot of spending there. There's 1.7 almost billion pounds being spent there. And he sort of said it in such a flurry, in such a flourish, as if just by saying it, it was done. And that is not the case. He hasn't done any of those things. He hasn't ended it. He's just said a few words. And I think people have said, oh, jury is out. It's not collapsed. He's still popular. But they're saying our three big issues for the nation is immigration, it is crime, it is the cost of living, and you haven't dealt with any of these, particularly at the moment, crime.
And that's the thing, people will feel it when there's tangible difference, right? But on your crime point, I wanted to loop back to also something you said earlier, because as you said, the day he went on holiday, there was this big early release announcement, but it just wasn't at all what people thought it was going to be. And it's emerged that even some grooming gang members are going to be released early.
So it was announced the exemptions would be for rapists, for serious child offenders, and also for groomers and grooming gangs. And this bit about the serious child offenders now.
All of it's serious, though, surely.
Yeah, exactly right. Any attack on a child is serious.
Absolutely.
But whether that definition was in there when they were charged means that whilst we even thought probably Burnham's first U-turn, the U-turn on this Sentencing Act, again, hasn't come to pass. He's promised these people wouldn't be let out of prison, and they are being let out of prison. And I think this inability to do what you're going to say, people, again, will start saying that as a pattern. You said you do something, it's not quite what we thought. We thought you were going to do this, it is not. And I think people need to realise, though, Labour is soft on crime. And this bubbling fury within the nation now that scale of justice is now tipping in favour of the criminal and not in favour of the law-abiding citizen. And that is what we're getting. And I will say, a left liberal elite has a couple of problems. Two main problems is this. They see criminals themselves as victims who should be understood and let off and not locked up. And it's not about punishments, it's how do we understand them. And remember, a lot of that left-wing elite has become human rights lawyers, defence lawyers, working for NGOs, working for charities to get them off, working for sort of penal institutions. So you've got that bit of them. And then the other bit of the left-wing liberal elite, they breathe purified air. They don't mix with these criminals. They're not passing the same them in the street or with them. And both of those things together mean that they see the criminal as a victim. And I think there is a massive disconnect with the public who do see shoplifters, who see antisocial behaviour, who see people taking drugs, who see illegal vape shops, and these people aren't, particularly the civil service.
Okay, I want to touch on something you said there. Andy Burnham keeps talking about prisons and prisons being overcrowded. I mean, what should the government do? Okay, well, let's talk about, and I will talk about that. You will remember I went back into Rishi Sunak's government and I got the post in the Cabinet Office. And one of my things was basically to say no. If I saw something come forward that was not conservative, as best as I could say no. And I will say in the Justice Department, not true of every department, but in the Justice Department, the civil servants are particularly left-leaning. And they came to me with the proposal that basically what Labour is doing now for their Sentencing Act, that we should be letting people out of prisons. And I said, absolutely not. Over my dead body will you be releasing those criminals? And they tried to say the same things. Prisons are overcrowded. We cannot. And I said, this is absolute bunkum. There are ways to sort things out. First of all, how many cells are not being used at the moment because they're in need of repair? There was about 2,000 at the time. I said, priority one, get those so they can be utilised. The second thing is, you will keep the most serious people in the highest lockup. But what can we do? Nightingale prisons, pop-up prisons within prisons. What can we do? Even get the Stockholm Bibby barge, put people on there. So those on shorter sentences put into other places that we can keep them locked up and the most serious ones locked up. And also you can buy prison spaces abroad. They did not want to do that. Because if you remember, they wanted to let people out of prison and Labour brought in Lord Timpson, who only thought a third of prisoners should be in prison. So they are soft on crime, soft on criminals, and we're letting people out. And that is their mindset.
Everything is digital now, isn't it? Your money, your photos, even your loyalty card at the coffee shop. So there's something quietly brilliant about owning one thing that isn't on a screen. Real gold bullion. The weight of it, the shine, it's just a lovely thing to hold. The Pure Gold Company, which was voted the UK's best gold broker, makes owning physical gold really simple. Tax-free gold coins from the Royal Mint with friendly one-to-one guidance from your first question to final delivery. There's no jargon, no pressure, no call centre queues. It's insured to your door or stored in a secure professional vault. So visit the Pure Gold Company today and tell them JJ sent you.
Well, speaking about being soft on criminals, I wanted to tell you about an investigation that a colleague of mine has done. He looked into this issue for 11 months, but it turns out that more than 1,500 convicted foreign criminals are living in taxpayer-funded asylum accommodation.
And this is just unacceptable. Again, we'll get into the immigration. Look what's going on. How are these people not in prison? And I'm looking at some of, as I said, these prison places. Labour has released 70,066 prisoners since it came in September 2024. So why aren't these people, who the Express have just done an exclusive on, 1,500, why aren't they in prison? The streets are now less safe because there has been a massive recall of those prisoners let out. We've got 51,500 re-offending. It is the highest re-offending rate ever of 31.9% of people re-offending. 25,000 criminals are creating 127,000 offences. So it is a mindset. How they've categorised a certain group of people who are, as you say, foreign foreign convicted criminals. Now, I know they might say, were those the ones entering the country who were separated and therefore put into different types of accommodation? But your reporter said, no, it's not those coming into the country that were separating out. These are people who've committed crimes here, then come out of prison, don't know what to do with them, so they're in free accommodation.
Yeah. And let's remember as well that 2,000 small boat migrants have also arrived while Burnham's been here. And we know that a lot of those people often commit crimes and offences too. And that's just adding to the stress on the country's justice system, isn't it?
Yeah. So, and that sort of, because some of these stories bleed into one another, like you said there. So I'm talking about people in prison. Were some of them foreign offenders? Yes, we know we've got 10,000 of them in there. They could go back home as well, and that would free up more places. And then we look at who is coming into the country. And people are saying, gosh, we just feel the streets are less safe. And I say to you, absolutely, those streets are less safe. We've let out 70,000 criminals who should be behind bars. Another thing the Sentencing Act did was stop people even going into prison. So if it was a sentence less than 12 months, they're not going into prison. Suspended sentences went up from 2 to 3 years. So that's another 7,000 people. So we're clocking up to 100,000 people. And then, as you say, people coming into the country, we do not know who they are. But what we do know, because what we've seen on TV, what we're living with, is there has been crime committed by them, particularly sexual crime, particularly violent crime, and people are saying it's not working. So when people are trying to massage the figures, it's not that bad, or you're ultra-right wing, or you're a fascist, or whatever it is, these people need to be understood, the answer is no. And that comes back to the second point, doesn't it, of the polling and what were the public thinking. They're upset about crime and they are upset about immigration. And it has been a big week for immigration and people coming into the country. As you said, 2,000 under Andy Burnham have already come into the country. We've had top record for days of number of people coming in. July the 26th, 750 people. The month before, something like 710 people. And we're kind of saying now, what happens to those people? Where do they go? What do we do? How do we even assess them? And I think this is a big issue. So they arrive, we stop them, we get them, and then what do? They do biometric tests, which is fingerprints and taking a photo. They will see if there's anything maybe on the criminal record about them, maybe check Interpol, maybe check Home Office, maybe check police records. But some people, we don't know if they've got a criminal record. They might not have got one in the home country, but they are here.
And Michael Knowles, our Home Affairs editor who did that investigation I referred to earlier, went to France this week with Lee Anderson from Reform, and he even found an instruction manual for these asylum seekers of how to seek asylum in the UK. And the thing that really caught my eye was there was a QR code that someone could scan. It would give you live weather updates. It was in 16 languages, and it was just a guide to being in the UK.
And how to travel across safely. And your reporter found these leaflets and also found who was handing them out. So police, it seemed, were sort of part of it. NGOs were part of it. And absolutely they were. So we have got English charities handing them out as well, telling them how to claim asylum. This one is called Right to Remain, an English charity helping people come here, given donations. It's been set up by they call it a migrant-led organisation focused on challenging the injustices of refugees. And people say, well, that charity doesn't get money from government. Oh, but who it refers to, lawyers, to get legal aid means it's getting our money to help these people in. There's other ones. Migrant Help is getting government funding. The Refuge Council is getting government funding. So like you said, you've got these whole host of people now being helped into our country when we're at breaking point. We can't let any more in. And then the other question I asked, because despite getting some of this biometric test, fingerprints and photo, we don't get DNA.
No, but this is something you've championed for years.
And I say, so when you've had a sexual assault, they've not left a photo behind to say, oh, here I am and here's a fingerprint. They've usually left other DNA. Yeah. So we know nothing about that. And we need to. And I know my local police force say we feel we've got our hands tied behind our back. We really can't go out.
And I guess it's as simple as just a saliva swab.
Yeah, well, you are spot on. That's exactly what they could do. So let me get this right. So when they come into the country, and by the way, pretty much everybody now who arrives by small boat is claiming asylum. Think of all the safe countries they've come through, but no, they're coming to us, right? We get them. We do these various checks, right? We put them in a hotel. We have no curfews on them. We don't check, unless they're a criminal, we have no real checks on them, come and go as they please. And yet some of the checks we do is medical checks for them. We send them to hospital to check the fine. We send them to dentists to check the fine. So you are right. As we're looking after them, putting them in hotels, giving them money, giving them medical checks, of course we should be taking a DNA swab from them and checking out who we are. And what do? I mean, I've put all freedom of information requests in, and questions to the library and questions to the department. They never want to ask them, by the way. I said, how do they fill their time? If you're here for a minimum of 6 months, and it's usually 2.5 years, what do they do?
Well, some would argue they go work illegally and go join those secret sectors.
Well, that is absolutely an opportunity for them, because you can't work for 12 months at least, but yes. But they're given things like, as I say, health checks, health treatment. They can learn English. They can go on courses. They've got befriending charities. They've got like groups. They can go away on tourist attraction days. I mean, no wonder people are coming to the UK when they're getting everything paid for and they're being looked after. It's like one long holiday. So I think why the population is saying, Andy Burnham, we thought you were going to tackle these big issues. You and I just sitting here could say there is a lot of things you could have done. And let's keep to immigration straight away. We want those charities stopped. We want that QR code, that site shut down. We want you to detain and deport immediately. So there's things that he could be doing that he isn't. And you know what his solution is?
Tell me.
Safe routes. Safe routes mean more opportunities for people to come in.
It's not a disincentive, is it?
It's absolutely not a disincentive. It is saying, come here via this way and you will be given, which they pretty much are already, you will be given asylum status. So of those 180,000 and 200,000 who've crossed since 2018, you look at them, about 80,000 have been given asylum status. 53,000 are on appeal. 12,500 haven't had a decision yet. We do not need easier, safer routes to get into this country, but this is what people are noticing about Burnham now. I'm going to call it bend it like Burnham or buckle like Burnham. He hasn't got those tough answers that are required. He's bending in the wind, Burnham.
Well, talking about getting tough on this issue, there's two people who have a lot to say on the issue, and that is Nigel Farage and Rupert Lowe, rather. And it seems like an electoral pact might be on the cards for them, potentially. What do you make of that?
Well, they've talked about it, and you've got to think, where did this come from? And it was basically the mayoral election
Greater
in
Manchester.
Manchester, yes. And then you saw, obviously, Labour winning, Reform not doing as well as it would have liked to, but Restore did very well. It got about 9%. It actually beat the Conservatives and it beat the Lib Dems. And so Rupert Lowe has reached out as maybe the deal maker, saying, would you like to join forces? Can we join forces? I mean, there's hurdles along the way, and people need to understand what they're looking at. They're not really looking at joining as a party to become the one party. They're looking at like electoral pacts. I won't stand in Great Yarmouth if you don't stand, say, in Runcorn. I won't stand here. So that's what they're looking like. But there is a stumbling block.
And Rupert Lowe's laid out 5 demands. Do you want to talk us through those?
Well, there's the personality, there's the arguments they've had. Rupert Lowe's called Farage a liar about a telephone call. But those 5 issues that you're talking about is, 1, committing to a referendum on the death penalty. The other one is the mass deportation of illegal migrants and their families, the bans on burqa and Sharia courts, and I think the one which is the one that has become the difficult bit for Nigel Farage, and a total ban on former Conservative ministers serving in any future cabinet.
Robert Jenrick won't like that one.
And Suella Braverman.
Yep.
Yeah. So basically, he has thrown the cat amongst the pigeons then. He's also saying, I'm going to be boss. I'm laying down the law here. I guess there's some things here that they could agree with, but that one will be an issue. And it's actually an interesting thing to say, because although that's particularly focused at Robert Jenrick and Suella Braverman, I'm wondering, what is he saying there? Because Kemi Badenoch was in a former Conservative government, and people will say she's doing very well. Her polling's one of the highest of the leaders. So should it be no overall control if it's a hung parliament at the next general election? Those two have come together and forged a pact. What's he doing? Is he, Rupert Lowe, muscling out any competition there? So there's obviously a couple of sticking points. But I think the big issue, and what the public don't like now that it is a sort of a multi-party state, is this divide of the right. That actually what will happen is Labour will win again because, to put it nicely, the right can't get their act together. They're calling it Unite the Right. How do we do that? Not be divided and let Burnham and his cronies in again.
Well, here's an exclusive for the Daily Expresso audience, but Farage kind of hinted at that in an exclusive interview with my colleague John Walker of the Daily Express. But so in an interview in Clacton, Farage said that Lowe has no chance of becoming Prime Minister, but he does accept that it's going to make it more difficult for him. He insisted that Restore and Reform are not the same. And then he said exactly what you kind of just hinted at there. But he plans to go towards the next general election and tell Restore voters that all they're going to do is help Labour stay in power.
Well, but, people will be dividing the vote. I don't know if people like to necessarily know that their vote, they shouldn't be doing what they want to do because this will happen. Sometimes that irritates a lot of voters. I mean, when I knock on doors, people will say to me, and this is quite different, who I definitely don't want to win is this person and this person. But it's not that I've told them not to vote for somebody or they will get, because they kind of like to vote for their own person. It's a long way away. I think there's a lot that can happen. I think Reform will take comfort from the fact they've now just come back on top of the pollings at 23%. They've gone up there. Labour has fallen slightly. I think this bodes well for them. I think the notion that Burnham was ever going to have an early election, I think this has put an end to that, because he thought he might have had a long and a higher bounce, and that isn't happening at all. And it also says, you know what, talking pleasantries isn't good enough. Talking about what you're going to do isn't good enough. And the public don't actually want people to keep spending more and more money if they're not getting value for money, because you will know the debt has gone up to 3 trillion today. It is absolutely phenomenal. So Labour is borrowing £4,270 per second. They are borrowing £369 million per day. The debt of 3 trillion is worth £100,000 to each household. So Burnham giving all of these giveaways that we talked about at the start of the show, people don't actually want. And he said he would keep to Reeves' sort of
fiscal rules,
but he's actually trying to bend them to borrow more, £9 billion more to invest in infrastructure. He's saying it's houses and schemes to encourage businesses to stay in the country. But most people are saying, eek, we can't afford it. And where is that money coming from, Burnham? And I will tell you where. Any one of us who pays tax, the middle classes are going to be squeezed within an inch of their life. They're going to be taxed on the houses. They're going to be taxed on their work. They're going to be taxed on going out. They're going to be taxed on any savings. This is the problem.
It does have the sense that it's going to be a bruising budget on the 28th of October when that comes. But thank you so much for joining us in studio. And Esther will be back on Tuesday ahead of the Claxon by-election on Thursday next week. So thank you so much, and thank you so much for watching. Please do like, share, subscribe, and hit the hype button.
Right, a quick pause in the podcast to tell you about our sponsor, Incogni. You had those phone calls from numbers you don't recognise, or you go in your inbox and there's emails for stuff you did not sign up for. Well, that's because someone somewhere is selling your private information. That's where today's sponsor comes in, Incogni. They will contact these people who have been taking your information, and they'll say, oi, stop, delete it. Go to the website, incogni.com. You type in the details. 2 minutes later, Incogni are sorting it out for you automatically. And because I love you, I've got you a discount. It ain't 10%, it ain't 20, 60% off. 60% off an annual Incogni plan. Just go to incogni.com/Daily Expresso or click the link in the episode description box below.